Good morning and welcome to another session of Facebook Live Candidate Question Time. My name's Sarah, and in a moment I'll be joined by Jason Perry, Managing Director at ASL Recruitment in Hastings. Jason is an HR specialist and he is also a Chartered Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. So he's in a really good spot to actually answer any questions you may have when it comes to your rights as a worker. So with no further ado, let me bring Jason into the mix. Good morning, Jason. Are you there?
Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And how are you today?
Very well. Well, I say very well. I was just having a sneezing fit just as you were about to introduce me there. Fortunately, I got it out of the way first.
Timing is everything, as they say.
What an introduction that could be.
So, Jason, we've got quite a bit to get through today, especially as this is probably going to be our last broadcast now until the 9th of January, just because of the way the dates fall.
Yes, I have a feeling people might have things better to do on their Boxing Day at 10 o'clock than watch us. Possibly we might have better things to do as well.
Indeed, indeed. Well, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say better, but just perhaps an expectation. So let's crack on with, first of all, I'm going to start with the worrying report that case numbers of COVID are rising quite significantly in Hastings, which obviously is a worry for you guys.
It is. The numbers in Hastings and Rother appear to have been going up. We've done very well throughout much of this crisis at being an unusual place on the southeast and bucking the national trends. It does appear right now there's a number of schools in Hastings where the numbers are going up. There's a couple of school closures because of COVID. So we are seeing signs that there are some problems. So I think, in the words of Chris Whitty, the government advisor, just because it's within the rules doesn't make it sensible is probably the best advice I've heard in recent days. Just be careful, stay safe.
Because clearly over Christmas there are restrictions that have been lifted, shall we say, easing of restrictions that allow people to, up to 3 households are allowed to mix inside, all of this sort of thing. But if you're in an area where the case numbers are rising, perhaps it's a view should be taken as to whether or not it's actually something you should be doing just because you are allowed to do it.
Yes, the bubbles, the Christmas bubble concept seems to be very complicated, particularly if you get into a shared household. Bear with me. Having said I got over the sneezing fit, it's still coming. But if you're in a shared household, the whole idea that your partner's allowed to be in 3 bubbles and you're allowed to be in another 3 bubbles as long as the 2 bubbles don't mix. And if we're not very careful, we're going to see a big spike over Christmas. And as we come into January, we're going to see case numbers rising just at the point where we really want them to be falling as we're rolling out the vaccine program. What we really want is to start to see the end of this coming into sight, not heading for a third wave. So, without sounding like one of these government advisors, just please be sensible, people. Keep your distance from others. Stay safe at Christmas.
Yeah. It's one Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas will happen again next year, and hopefully by then the landscape will be significantly different.
Yes. I think big family gatherings at Easter is the way forward.
Yes, save it till Easter. That's a great idea. Okay, so on the basis that case numbers are rising, it's worth noting that SSP or statutory sick pay will still be paid.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we've heard a couple of cases where employers have got this wrong and have said, no, you can only have 2 weeks in total. My understanding of the rules is quite clear. We've been through this with lawyers, that you have up to 2 weeks SSP if you need to self-isolate, either because you or a member of your household has symptoms or because you're told to because of track and trace. And that means you get statutory sick pay from day one. Bear in mind, normally with SSP, you need to have 3 days of illness before you qualify. With coronavirus statutory sick pay, you get it from day one. So there is that for up to 2 weeks. If you have symptoms, please isolate and let's try and keep this under control.
Yeah. Okay, so also on that note, let's talk about tenants' rights, because we've got a lot of people who are renting accommodation, and obviously their pay has been affected by coronavirus.
Well, there's a couple of points here, Sarah, and I'd love to say something different, but the fact of life is a lot of the people we work with are those who are struggling financially. Many people who are in temp work are, still finding it difficult on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So as well as the SSP, it's worth mentioning that there is that additional support of up to £500 allowance for people who have to isolate if they're on benefits. And you need to talk to the benefits people about that, but there is that extra claim. But on the same basis, the rights for people in rented accommodation have been extended, so no one can be evicted if they can't pay their rent at this time. And those rights have been extended until the 31st of March. They may or may not be extended again, I don't know, but it's really, really good that we've got that again till we're towards the end of this crisis. By the time we get to March, April, we should have vaccinated large numbers of people, and we should be looking forward to a much more positive spring and summer in 2021. And that right has just been extended, so that's really, really good news.
Okay, that's going to be a weight off a lot of people's minds. So that is good. We also should probably touch on Brexit, because that's been in the news quite a bit just lately. It's sort of started to take from COVID.
It's almost nice to have something non-COVID to talk about, isn't it? I mean, we still don't know what the outcome's going to be. We have a fair idea what the direction of travel is. It now looks increasingly likely that talks may break down and we may end up, certainly on the 1st of January, be in a no-deal situation. Bear in mind that's no trade deal, not the no-exit deal, which they're two very different things. And the reason I stress that is about workers' rights. Okay, we reached an agreement quite a long time ago that people who were here in the UK from Europe would be entitled to stay here and continue working. And it's really important people know that. There is a scheme called the EU Settlement Scheme. And anyone who is from the European Union and is working here, living here, has a right to apply for settled status. Now, there's two levels of it. One is pre-settled status, the other is settled status, and it's all about whether or not you've been here and worked here for 5 years. Okay? But the deadlines are you need to apply for that by June next year. Now, I'd urge anyone to get their applications in now for several reasons. One, it may be one of those things that you struggle with the application process. You need to check things, you need to find detail. Don't leave it to the last minute. But the other thing to bear in mind is employers have an obligation to check that people they're employing are legally allowed to work in the UK. So employers are already asking people for their settled status and to prove it. So if you're looking for work, if you're in work, it's highly likely that your employer, if they haven't already done so, are going to be asking you to validate your settled status and confirm it. So get on that government website, search for settled status. If anyone wants any advice or support on it, I believe we have a blog on the subject on our website. But equally, we have people within ASL who have applied for it themselves. If you're having any difficulty, call us, talk to us, and we can guide you and help you a little bit through that process. But it's ever so important. Okay,
and probably something else to sort of mention is if you are planning on staying, you may as well get this done sooner rather than later, because prospective employers will actually be looking for you to have the commitment that you are going to stay. So it's
because of the obligations on employers, Sarah, for many, many years. I think it's the 2006 Asylum and Immigration Bill, if I remember my law correctly, requires an employer to check and see sight of somebody's passport in order to offer them a job. And it's basically so people don't employ, lovely government phrase, don't employ illegal aliens. Which conjures up a whole different image, I know. But the requirement is on the employer, and there are actually huge fines on employers for getting this wrong. So employers are going to be looking at this. And they're going to be asking, if they haven't already done so, A, if you're already working for them, or B, if you're applying for a new job, they're going to be wanting to see proof. To get that application in, it's good for you to feel safe in your job. It's also really, really important if you're looking for new work. Get the application in so you can prove and show to employers you have either settled or pre-settled status. Incidentally, if you only get pre-settled status, that's not a problem. That simply means that you didn't have enough history to validate the whole process. But you can update it at any time in the future.
Okay, so either way, just basically get your status settled one way or another, even if it turns out to be pre-settled initially.
Absolutely. Okay. And it applies to anyone who arrives in the UK on or before, I think it's the 31st of December. So still anyone who's travelling here today, as I understand it, can apply for settled status. They just have to go through the process of showing that they were here, they were in work. But it means anyone who arrives here in January next year does not have that right.
Right. Okay. So it's got to be here by the 31st of December. Okay. I just want to touch on community testing. So there's a new type of testing procedure that's come out, which is lateral flow testing. They've trialled that in Liverpool, and it looks like they're going to be rolling that out across all tier 3 areas.
Yes.
Obviously, those areas are being reviewed. I think it's the 16th of December.
I believe it's the 16th, and there is speculation that Hastings and Rother may enter tier 3. Clearly, we don't know that, but it's a real possibility right now.
Okay, so, and in which case, presumably, that will also have an impact on the rules around relaxing things over Christmas. Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Interestingly, on that note, what I do know is they're rolling out the lateral flow testing at schools in Kent. However, and I say this because my own daughter's in a school in Tunbridge, and they're not doing it there. So they're targeted it on the really heavy areas. So Maidstone, I think Thanet, some of those areas where we've seen really large numbers of cases. So the very fact that you're in tier 3 doesn't mean lateral flow testing is going to be rolled out.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's probably about it for today. We're just sort of running out of time a little bit, Jason. Okay. Let's end on a positive note, because we are heading towards Christmas, and the end of 2020 is on the horizon, and things are looking brighter for 2021 at the moment, aren't they?
They are very much. There's just almost daily new exciting news on the vaccine developments and where we're going on that. So I really think we're very definitely at the beginning of the end. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel and see our way out of this. So I'm expecting a very positive first quarter in 2021 coming back from this, and people beginning to feel life is getting more normal, certainly as we get past March, April next year. So a few more months of the tough bit, I think, but the end is in sight.
Which is a very good note to be ending on. So thank you very much for joining us today, Jason. Appreciate that. Thank you to everybody at home who's watching. We won't be back next in 2 weeks' time, because that's Boxing Day, and we won't be back on the 2nd either, because we're sort of assuming that everybody's going to be busy enjoying their Christmas time. So we'll be back on the 9th of January. I hope you can join us then. In the meantime, we'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Do stay safe, and here's to 2021. Thanks very much indeed, and we'll see you. Oh, if you do have any questions in the meantime, the offices are open until Christmas Eve, so you can either drop them a line at hastings@aslgroup.co.uk or phone on 01424 452 999. So thank you very much indeed, and do have a great Christmas.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.